Hello, everybody. I'm your robot. I am not human. Did you know that? Okay. So this is our last week of the quarter, and this lesson is scheduled for the 12th of September. So I hope you've enjoyed the quarter. Again, I am a robot, not a human, right? And we shall proceed with the lesson. Must minimize screen. Thank you. Must start from beginning. Week 9, 10. Okay, 9. Better living through anthropology. A key to military success is intelligence, which means the information you gain about your enemies or information about the enemy, both the physical terrain, which is uh, the physical field. Is it wet? Is it a desert? Is there a mountain range? That's the physical terrain of the battlefield, and the human terrain of the enemy's organization and capacity. So, do they have a sloppy organization? Is it a well planned out organization? And then what's their ability? That's what they mean by capacity. We'll make it easy. If your army is only 100 soldiers and you find out your enemy has a capacity for 1,000 soldiers, this military intelligence should tell you not to fight these people. They have too many soldiers against you. Okay? So, this is why the United States military and its recent operations in Iraq and also Afghanistan have realized the value of knowledge about the cultures and the languages of local peoples, both friends and foes. Foes means enemies, not your typical FAUX, which means not real. Like you buy something that looks like leather, but they tell you it's a fox leather. And they don't mean fox, FOX, it just means fake. So foes here means enemies. The tactical worth of local cultural knowledge is recognized in the U.S. Department of Defense's The Human Terrain Team Handbook. Commanders and planners, the document explains, require insight into cultures, perceptions, values, beliefs, interests, and decision-making processes of individuals and groups, which should be evaluated according to their society, social structure, culture, language, power, and authority. Oh, and interest. Okay. So all this, as we used to say, gobbledygook, in a simple sense, let's look at ancient, let's say ancient Western uh, history or European history. Uh, when one army fought another army, let's say, oh, the Roman army went into some area and they fought these foreign people. Uh, they found out that some of these people, due to their cultural upbringing, if you killed their leader or king, they would just give up. They would not continue to fight. So this became a strategy for them. They would constantly look and try to kill the leader since they usually sat in a high position. And they knew if they could concentrate on that, even though they'd lose a certain number of their own soldiers, then the fight would be over. Okay. So that's looking into their cultures, not necessarily their strategy. You have to look into the people's beliefs. And what they'll explain to you here is this can make things easier in defeating an enemy and helping the regular people when you understand, again, their perceptions, values, beliefs, interests, and decision-making processes. So continuing here, such intelligence is best gathered by human terrain teams. Again, terrain is soldiers that cross the earth, so to speak. You could say dirt or swamp or mud, whatever it is. 5 to 9 person teams only, not a battalion of 100 soldiers. Deployed by the Human Terrain System, HTS, to support field commanders by filling their knowledge gap in the current operating environment and providing cultural interpretations of events occurring within their area of occupations. The team is composed of individuals with social science and operational backgrounds that are deployed or used with tactical and operational military units to assist in bringing knowledge about the local population into a coherent, which means understandable, analytic or studied framework, and build relationships with the local power brokers in order to provide advice and opportunities to commanders and staffs in the field. It's another strategy. I remember seeing a documentary, and I've got some Mongolian students here, Tol and Genghis, a couple people. You can tell me in the email when you send it over if it's true. But I remember seeing this thing that way back, I guess before Genghis Khan unified the different tribes in Mongolia, that when different Mongolian tribes would fight, if they were fighting and suddenly it started to storm and they had lightning and thunder, they would stop. They felt that it was bad luck to uh, fight. They wouldn't just continue like, oh, you see armies in Vietnam fighting in the rain and whatever. They would just stop. So let me know if that's true or not. Sometimes the documentaries they put here are not necessarily true, right? So again, you need to know the strategies. So now we're going to jump into the anthropology of design. You will see in this last chapter that we're going to go through what the book puts forth as far as, anthropology, what we just did in the design, or not the design, we're going to do design now, but in the strategy and understanding of peoples and why they do things. And then after this, we'll get into medical anthropology. And then finally, we'll go into environmental, what have anthropologists done, trying to improve the environment. Okay, so kind of a varied theme today. Okay, so like I said, continuing anthropology of design. It is hard to overestimate or even to fully appreciate the ubiquity of design in the modern global capitalist system. Everything that we buy, use, or see is designed. And the advertising to promote these goods and services is itself designed, both often flowing from collaborations between economists, psychologists, engineers, artists, and anthropologists. So they're kind of saying here that there's so many things involved and that are interconnected to make this global system. I'll try to put it in what they say layman terms, or easy peasy lemon squeezy. It's kind of saying with all these different factors and people's involved, everybody gets paid, right? Everybody does a different part, and then everybody, economists and artists and engineers and in the capitalist system. So everybody gets their shot, right? Okay. Next. Cultural anthropologists certainly can study and have studied the design process in the culture and community of designers. This includes ethnographies of various design professions, which help develop new products and services of many kinds, and they are centrally concerned with satisfying the needs of users with their products. Anthropologists have interviewed designers and artists in the studio, sat in on meetings of designers, and observed the design process from first idea to final product. This interest obviously ties to the subjects of the previous chapter. So before I move on, let me just say something within here, right? The culture and community of designers. This includes various design professions would help develop new products and services of many kinds. And they are centrally concerned with satisfying the needs of users with their products. So again, trying to make things easy for you to focus on this. Sometimes what's the new term in English now? Word salad. Sometimes these things can become a word salad to you and to me at times. But I guess it's like, okay, you're a designer. Okay, let me preface that. Okay, many, many years ago, even though it still has not taken place in Japan, and my students have said it's never going to happen in Japan. They don't want it. So, but when you go to the McDonald's or Burger King or whatever, they have these endless refill machines, right? Endless. And I can remember a time when they didn't, right? When they didn't. So, and like I said, my students from Japan, and I've never seen it when I've gone to Japan, a refill machine. Or Korea. Now, somebody might have one, but on a whole, you're not going to see them because if they feel that their money's being stolen. But on the other hand, this got started in the U.S. because someone saw a need for that, and they didn't used to care. And let's say a McDonald's that you come and ate and you left, or you picked up food and you left. But then they started thinking, hey, we need to have these people stay as long as they can in the McDonald's. Again, McDonald's, when I was a kid and growing up, there was no place to sit. You could sit outside maybe, but there was no inside McDonald's. So their rationale was, how can we get them to stay here longer? And then the longer they stay, they'll probably order something else. And the idea came up with the drink refill machines. So the person who made the machine got money. McDonald's gave away some free drinks, but had people stay longer and then buy more food. So again, you see the flow of everybody getting paid, right? All right. So biography are objects of things as they develop from conception, which means the beginning idea. Somebody has an idea about something, that's conception, right? To a life of their own. So that means when it comes alive and these things uh, start happening. I'll tell you, if we keep it, like I said, if I keep it easy and keep it on the food scale, again, I remember growing up and there was a lot of different people through the years would say something like, hey, why don't we have a pizza place where people can kind of more or less make their own pizza? And this used to be laughed off a lot. I thought, what a stupid idea. I mean, if you watch the Seinfeld, you had Kramer always talking about that too. But then suddenly the invention of Mod Pizza, which is a chain, and I'm trying to remember the name of the other place. There was one in K-Town on between 6th and Wilshire. And I like that place too. And basically, you went up there, and I mean, you did not cook it yourself, but you just told them, I want this kind of bread or this kind of bread. What kind of oil? What kind of tomato sauce? What kind of ingredients? So it actually came to being. It had a life of its own, right, from the conception of just an idea. Okay, so these finished products include not only works of art, but also mundane. Mundane means everyday things that people just either bored of or take for granted, from clothing and office machines to automobiles, foods, and food packaging. But remember, these things can go out of style, no matter how popular they were in the beginning. I can tell you, I've taught in K-Town for many years now. And when I first taught, you guys are so much younger now. I don't know, but you might not know. But I would say the number one Korean sports car for young guys at that time was a sports car called Tiburon. And K-Town used to be full of Tiburons, and I haven't seen a Tiburon in over 10 years. So remember, these things can come and go. Same with the different foods. Like I said, that chain of make your own pizza places, only Mod exists now. That chain, I forget the name of it, is gone. So there you go. So here, for example, research has supported the common sense notion that the user is a central trope or theme for designers. The focus of their professional attention, identifying and meeting the user's needs and wants is the central mission of the designers. Okay, and that goes back to an old saying that I used to hear when I was younger in the United States. The customer is always right. Okay, so these designers, just like other things, always try to say, well, how can we make the customer more happy? Because the more happy they are, the more money they'll spend, the more times they'll come back, the more times they will tell a friend to come or bring a friend. So a small inconvenience now will bring us a lot of money in the long run. And again, I don't know, this has kind of changed. Again, I'm trying to give you these personal antidotes. But since that was the case, uh, as I was, growing up and got older in my 20s, restaurants were just like that. Hey, people want this kind of food, or they want this kind of drink, or they want this kind of salad, or, and they would constantly find a way to please the customers. Now, and my thinking is, I don't know if it's because for years now, we've had maybe the last, I don't know, 5, 7 years, we've had these cooking shows where everybody comes on there and wants to be a chef, and then the chef insults them, the lead chef, and like Gordon Ramsay or whatever. These people want their dream is to have their own restaurant. And what I've come to see now is a changing where a lot of these owners really, really are not looking to make this is the new wave, customers happy, but they want to make themselves happy. They like to cook what they like. So you go there and say, hey, do you have this or that? So again, I'll give you an example. Somebody recommended an Italian place for me on Fairfax. And so I went in there. And, supposed to be a great pasta place and was very popular. And I asked the guy, and he had that certain look like, this is my restaurant. I'm a chef. Not the look like, hello, welcome to my restaurant, and how can I make you happy? So I asked him, I said, okay, you do great pasta here. Do you have angel hair pasta? No, I don't like angel hair pasta. The way I cook it, it doesn't hold up. So no. Oh, okay. So that's out. And then I said, well, do you have just the regular, thin spaghetti then, which is thicker than the angel hair? Angel hair is very thin. No, I don't like that either. Okay, so two things he didn't like. That's different than how can I help you? Or sure, we can do this for you. And then I finally said, I'll just set my friend here loves the pasta. I will settle for a pizza. How about that? No, I don't have a pizza oven. I don't like making pizzas. So I had to leave, right? And then he was a new guy and doing the new wave thing. Then I went to the traditional one, like it's in this book, Designing for the People and the Customer. And I said, do you have angel hair pasta? We can do it for you. Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. And I asked for something else and they can do that too. No problem, sir. So again, it should be the central trope for designers, the focus of their professional attention. Identifying and meeting the user's needs and wants is the central mission of designers. Okay. So again, however, we have learned two other things about the user. First, and obviously, the user does not exist until the useful object has been created. That is, constructing objects also construct the individual user and the user community. Okay. So what they're saying there is kind of like the need for certain things. Again, like I said, things can't be popular and then run out of being popular. Like, I don't know, I think it's about time Chipotle probably goes out of being popular, right? But there's no need suddenly until it's designed. So again, before Chipotle started and, oh, we're a fast burrito place, there was no need for just a fast burrito place. But once you make that need, then the customers appear. Okay, that's why it says the customer does not exist until the useful object has been created. Okay, so it also alters the experience of that, or which means changes, of that individual and community. Second, the user does not necessarily remain a passive recipient, which means doing nothing, of professional designers, but can be and often is active in applying the design object, modifying it in some ways, or designing his or her own objects. Okay, so again, we finished the designing. We did the strategy. Now we're going to get into the medical anthropology. Okay, so another thing I'll just let you know, I'm going to give you a little less reading today and two less questions. Only two less because this is the last week before the test, and I don't want to get you. I want to give you a little bit of relief for hanging in there for 9 weeks, and then you'll do the 10th week test. So just a little kindness. Don't want to bump you up with too much information. Okay. All right. So again, as I've said, medical anthropology. Sickness and health are universal facts and concerns across cultures, and all societies have health-related concepts, practices, and practitioners. Medical anthropology is the sub or smaller unit discipline that, according to the website of the Society for Medical Anthropology, it investigates those factors which influence health and well-being, which is broadly defined. It's really hard. What they're saying there is one culture might say this person is doing really well, and another culture says, no, not really, right? The experience and distribution of illness, the prevention and treatment of sickness, healing processes, the social relations of therapy management, and the cultural importance and utilization of pluralistic medical systems. Pluralistic means many. The discipline of medical anthropology draws upon many different theoretical approaches. Interesting. It is as attentive to popular health culture as bioscientific epidemiology. You don't have to get into what that is. And to the social construction of knowledge and politics as scientific discovery and hypothesis testing. So again, they're trying to say cultural things are just as important as your standard medical procedures. That's what they're trying to say here. It also intervenes or gets into the study and the effectiveness and impact of health practices and to make those practices more effective. Although medical anthropology, like medical sociology, is today one of the largest and most active subfields, both got a comparatively late start in their disciplines. A key moment was W.H.R. Rivers, and so three initials. 1924's book Medicine, Magic, and Religion, based on lectures given to the Royal College of Physicians of London. A trained clinician as well as an ethnologist, see chapter 2 when we talked about ethnologists. Rivers not only understood medicine, But the cultural phenomenon, but also considered medicine and magic religion to be so intertwined or interconnected that they could not be easily or meaningfully separated. Much of anthropology's early history with medical topics then was framed or structured by the supernatural ideas, practices, and roles like a shaman, right? Or what Mexicans call curandero, or Koreans call kut, woman, or the answer is kut, men too. And that constituted healing in pre-modern cultures. Again, that is pre-modern cultures. Uh, some of these things still go on, even though, let's say, they have not been, like it said here, hypothetically tested and medical trials and things like that. Like we know that penicillin will clean infection, but if there's something that Korean shaman or a Mexican shaman from the village does for infection, it probably has not been medically tested, right? So they're trying to say, but you have to look in these things because sometimes these are helpful for those kinds of folks that maybe come from a village or a mountain or uh, things like that. So continuing, simultaneously, cultural anthropologists contributed to modern international health initiatives. Cora Dubois, who previously worked for the U.S. Office of Strategic Services, was hired by the World Health Organization in 1950. Now, if you're saying, why do you say Dubois? This is actually a French name. It is pronounced Dubois, right? Even though before they told me that as a kid and I was just learning how to read English, I would probably say Cora Dubois, right? But that's a strict English style pronunciation. William Caudill is generally credited with introducing the term medical anthropology or applied anthropology in medicine in 1953. And the forerunner of the Society for Medical Anthropology was founded in 1967. In 1971, enough medical anthropology research existed to merit a review article by Horacio, or if you speak Spanish, Horacio, right? Horacio Fabrega. Today, there are textbooks, courses, and graduate programs in medical anthropology. In many ways, medical anthropology unifies the two original strands of anthropology, the physical and the cultural, right? Let me write that down. Make sure that's understood. Physical and cultural. Who knows, it might show up in the final. Just making that obvious for you there, trying to help out my students. Okay. In many ways, medical anthropology unifies the two original strands of anthropology. Okay, I just did that. But here we go. Besides the physical and the cultural, in its biocultural perspective. You don't have to remember the biocultural perspective. That's okay. Which, according to textbook authors Andrea Wiley and John Allen, considers the social, ecological, and biological aspects of health issues and how these interact within and across population. The biological aspects include the human body in its gendered and racialized form. So you want to read about gender and racial, see chapter 4. For instance, anthropologists and sociologists have noticed and decried the health disparities between races and genders in the United States, such that disease and mortality are unequally distributed through the society. So a little high-level language there, but it's saying that I don't know the numbers right now off the top of my head. I'm not a doctor. I'm not in the medical field. But what they're trying to say as far as disease and mortality, like let's say high blood pressure is found, I don't know, maybe in the highest amongst the uh, our black population. Maybe second is Latinos, and then third is Caucasian folks. And then mortality. So also different groups uh, live longer than others. Maybe the Asians live longer than uh, blacks, whites, or Latinos. So what they're trying to say is this is unequally distributed, which I don't know what you can do about it if people have certain genes. Uh, so like for example, uh, certain groups get certain diseases that only that group uh, can get, right? I think it's Tay-Sachs for Jewish folks. They get Tay-Sachs, but if you're not Jewish, you can't get it, right? And blacks can get sickle cell anemia. If you're not black, you can't get sickle cell anemia. So if that puts them in a higher number, then you're saying, well, it's not equally distributed, this, disease or mortality. Medical scientists have also recently noticed the flaws or errors in their research and treatment practices for women, such as a narrow focus on bikini medicine or the medical conditions that affect the parts of a woman's body covered by a bikini. So I guess they're talking about sexual organ areas, maybe breast cancer, problems that women have in the lower areas. Anthropologists are particularly qualified to examine the social aspects of it. Remember the social aspects, not medical doctors. And they're explaining here, such as the culture or folk knowledge. Again, we're getting back to shamans and concepts of illness and health, or what we call ethno medicine. Every culture possesses its own terminology for sickness, its own ideas about the causes of disease, including supernatural or spiritual cases. I can tell you, you have to look it up, but I can explain it to you. There's a disease, and people are not sure how they get it. A lot of times they get it for a short amount of time, and then it goes away. But that's like 6 months or something, and it's called Bell's palsy. And basically, what that is, let's say you have your normal face, and then suddenly, like the right side of your face is swollen, or it seems to drop off to the side on one side. Like with people that have a stroke, a lot of times the brain is damaged, so part of the face looks paralyzed. So this is what Bell's palsy looks a lot. And I remember a lot of these older Mexican ladies would say, if you washed your hair and your hair was wet, you went out in the night, and this is what they learned, their grandparents in the village told them, that you would get Bell's palsy. Right? Again, no studies done, no medical trials. It's just a cultural or folk knowledge, that you would get the Bell's palsy and have a paralyzed one side of your face. So again, anthropologists are talking about these kinds of things added to our regular medical knowledge. Every culture, okay, we already went over that. So again, supernatural, that was probably supernatural or spiritual causes, and its own healing practices, often incorporating supernatural or spiritual actions. Some very sophisticated, for example, Ayurvedic, which comes from India, or Chinese medicine. Anthropologists certainly have described traditional medical concepts and practices, x-rays, penicillin, things like that, finding more diversity than often imagined with this other folk stuff. Traditional healers may take many forms, from herbalists, like again, herbs will fix everything, and specialists in home remedies to ritual specialists or spiritual healers who often use possession, trance, and spirit mediumship. So that means when you go into a spell or someone seems to be possessed by a demon or ghost, you can't take them to the local general hospital. They don't have any medicine to take the evil spirit out of them. You have to go to, again, a shaman or spiritual healer. And then we have your magical religious healers, or unless that's supposed to be Spanish, mágico, religious healers, whose methods include charms, amulets, spells, and exorcism, right? So charms and amulets are certain colored stones. They could be rubies or crystals, things like that, and they hold them over your body. I have a few Filipinos here. I don't hear too much about it anymore, but years ago they used to show these documentaries about the Filipino shamans that the Filipinos would go to, and they would say, "Oh, I have this internal pain, or something's wrong in my insides," and then they would rub and rub their bodies with this oil, and then suddenly there would be blood in the shaman's hands, and then there would be some kind of weird, like organ material or something in their state. See, we're able to take this, whether they said it was cancer or whatever, out of you without actually having to cut you open. So those were kind of magic religious healers. Today, medical anthropologists stress the fact of medical pluralism. Again, pluralism means many, and the coexistence of two things existing at the same time, of traditional and modern, biomedical, again, x-rays, mammograms, I forget what the heck do they call that, where they run you through the big tube. And these concepts and practices eroding the boundary between these allegedly distinct systems. Now we're going to get into Native American example. For instance, in the Navajo Healing Project, anthropologists and medical experts have studied the activities of modern medicine, traditional Navajo healers, three different kinds, Navajo Christian faith healers, and Native American church healers. Not only learning about their practices, measuring their results, but also intending to produce knowledge that could be circulated back into the Navajo community in a way that could enhance healthcare providers' understanding of their Navajo patients. So I guess a way to break this down for you, again, trying to make this easy peasy for you, is that a lot of times um, for, let's say, people that are not born here, United States, and raised here, and maybe they come from a rural area, whatever country they come from, right? And they believe in their own shamans and things like that. A lot of times, even if you supply them and let them know, their family members explain to them, translate or what have you, that hey, this is medicine for your cancer, or kidneys, or heart, or you name it. It's like, and the kids know it's going to work, right? But it's like, unless for them you show an element of a shaman or a traditional belief, their mind can't accept that. And that's a very important part of healing. It's like they always tell you, uh, we're going to do a really difficult surgery on you, and it's going to be tough. So for you to succeed, you're going to have to want to heal. If you give in to the pain and, oh my God, this is so tough, then you might not make it. It's so important your mind set that you're like, okay, I don't care about the pain, or maybe I have to do another surgery. I want to survive. And just by that mindset will help the surgery and the medicines or whatever they're doing for you. And that's the same way here. So that maybe if they have a shaman talk to them, provide them with information, then they can accept the Western biomedical medicine, right? Even though they really don't need it, but for them, they do. It's what accesses their mind to say, hey, this is, okay. So now we're going to go into the last part of our environmental anthropology. An interest in the physical environment is as old as cultural anthropology itself. Since part of our perspective is biocultural adaptation to the environment, right? We want to try to, what is the term? We don't want to leave a heavy carbon footprint, right? We want to be more gentle on the environment because we can destroy it through negligence. Indeed, classic ethnographies tended to open with a chapter on the environment, describing the landscape, climate, and flora and fauna, which means flowers, trees, plants. That's what flora and fauna mean. I used to think there were two different women. When I was younger, I'm like, are they single? But it doesn't mean that. Okay, since Frederick Ratzel's 1882, that goes back a long way. I don't think anybody was alive, even young Pilchol. So his 1882 Anthropogeography and the author Boas, 1888, The Central Eskimo. Cultural anthropology has stressed the ways that the environment shapes human organization and interaction, just as human behavior, physical behavior shapes the environment. In the first half of the 20th century, probably the two most prominent anthropologists on the topic of the environment were Alfred Kroeber and Julian Stewart. Kroeber's 1939 Cultural and Natural Areas of Native North America divided Native American societies into a number of bounded geographic regions such as Arctic Coast or Northwest Coast based on shared cultural characteristics. Further, he declared that it was impossible to understand culture apart from the physical circumstances it inhabited. So again, do you get that? It's like the culture and the physicalness went hand in hand. But it was Stewart who brought the environment to the center of anthropological concern with his theory of cultural ecology. Again, ecology is study of land and nature. In his 1955 theory of cultural change, methodology of multilinear evolution, he argued that adaptations to the environment were critical to the process of cultural change. Interesting. So changes to the environment were critical to the process of cultural change. Although he included factors like technology, energy sources, and the organization of work in his analysis of man-land relations, hence there was always more than one possible cultural adaptation to any environment. Already in 1956, Frederick Barth had opined, that was his opinion, right, that geography could shape ethnic identities and relationships. And again, like I told you before, that might be this person's, even though they're a scientist, belief, yours can be different. As different groups settled into different territories and environmental niches, which means their own little space. For example, pastoralists occupying certain land in the vicinity of farmers or city dwellers. Dwellers means people who live in an area. After the 1960s, the general interest in the environment developed into a disciplinary specialization called ecological anthropology. You don't need to know this time frame, don't worry. Imagining how societies and environments constituted a cultural natural system. Much attention was also paid to specific cultural economic practices like slash and burn, which is what they do in Mexico, or swidden, agriculture, and whether such practices were rational. Like, for example, that reminds me of Mexico too, they also burn all their garbage, which doesn't help with their air quality. Okay? We don't burn the garbage in the United States. At the extreme, as in Marvin Harris's cultural materialism, every aspect of culture could be explained in practical environmental terms. In a famous analysis in his 1975 Cows, Pigs, Wars, and Witches, the riddles of culture, he suggested that Hindu cow reverence was little more than the symbolic recognition of the value of living cows for milk, dung, which was probably used for fertilization or fertilizer, right? And traction. I think if you'd ask a Hindu, they'd probably say it goes a lot deeper than that. But again, like I said before, especially if you're an Indian in this class, or even an Indian Hindu, you might say this guy's a little wacky. So, or he doesn't know his information that deeply. So, like I said, you guys are, please hold on to whatever you believe. So, much of anthropology's engagement with environmental questions was related to the development policies and practices of the later 20th century. In pursuit of economic growth and poverty alleviation, which means getting rid of, taking the pain away, governments and agencies like the World Bank promoted development projects that almost inevitably or almost always would affect the environment, such as dam construction and agricultural modernization. So, my Chinese guys, if you remember Gao, Madame Gao from before, I asked her one time, oh, they made that big, I forget, the Three Gorges Dam in China. And unfortunately, there was a lot of rural people who lived in the villages and mountains, and they had them move. And then she said that's turned out to be a bad thing for the environment in China. So I don't know, these things happen in every country. A key component of development was the Green Revolution, which used new plant species, farming techniques and technologies, and population relocation to increase food yield, or how much of a harvest you can have. Anthropologists closely watched and sometimes helped plan, implement, which means put to use, and assess such projects. Alan Hoban, 1986, for instance, did a feasibility study of a resettlement project in Cameroon. It's a country, if you don't know, and helped stop the project on the basis of environmental and social concerns. In the same year, John Grazel studied the failure of a land and cattle management program in Mali, that's in Africa if you didn't know that, which had not considered local attitudes towards cattle. What planners had overlooked was the aesthetic, which is the beauty, and the emotional core of pastoralism for people affected by the project. And such oversights explained why development projects have failed and will continue to fail. Interesting subject, which you can go into at a later time. Anthropologists have commented on the environmental and social impact of all sorts of issues and schemes, which means plans, including water management, okay? Mining, which could be mining for diamonds, forestry, how you deal with your forest, are you cutting down trees at a rapid rate, or like what's going on in Brazil. Describing plans and policies that have often been sadly lacking in cultural and environmental awareness. John Bodley has made a career out of documenting the malign effects of development and environmental manipulation, including so-called diseases of development, like obesity, diabetes, and hypertension, especially on the world's indigenous societies, or again, Indian folks, or Ainu, or people who live in Siberia, things like that. In books like Anthropology and Contemporary Human Problems, currently in its 6th edition, and Victims of Progress, currently in its 5th edition. One brief example comes from Pauline von Hellerman's treatise or document on forest management in southern Nigeria, where colonial and post-independent policies attempted to preserve a forest that was not so traditional after all. Much of the alleged forest was currently or recently used farmland, and policymakers completely misunderstood local land tenure systems. So the initial effort to set aside forest reservations actually made deforestation worse. Oh my. Planners also imported practices learned in Asia to an African context where they were not as suited. And in the end, the entire idea of division of all land into separate spheres of forest and farmland is central to a European vision of forest management and indeed of landscapes, but was quite alien or different to southern Nigeria, where landscapes had resulted from centuries of symbiotic, which means connected, interrelations between farmers and forests. So we finished the reading. Like I said, we're going to do a little less today, give you a break. So the reading's finished a little early, only 10 minutes, but better than nothing, right? Okay, let's get into the questions. What has the U.S. military realized in its operations in Iraq? So again, that's the first part of my lecture today. And then U.S. commanders and planners require insight into what? That means they require this knowledge, intimate knowledge of what to help them plan, right, their strategies. Next, cultural anthropologists have certainly studied what? So there's, if you read this part here, you will find the answer if you don't remember. 4, the finished products of designers include art and which 2 other things? So there's a little list here of 3 things. So it's not only art, the finished problem, the products, the end. Remember we talked about idea, conception, until it came alive. So give me 2 more things besides art. We'll be okay. Okay, next, 5, according to the website of the Society for Medical Anthropology, anthropology is what? So there's a definition that they give of anthropology. Find this, you'll find this. 6, which 2 original strands of anthropology did medical anthropology unify? So you're just going to find the 2 things that they put together. All right. And believe me, it is there. So again, Genghis, don't tell me. I think it was Taco Bell, and McDonald's. No. Next, cultural anthropology has stressed what about the environment? So we just read about the environment, so that answer should be fresh for you. What did they stress? That the environment is the environment. No, go a little deeper than that, please. And 8, like I said, I'm only giving you 8, not the usual 10. Anthropologists have commented on which issues on the environment. So there's a little list there. There's about 4 to 5. So again, the same thing applies. You don't have to give me all 5, but 3 is nice. 1 is not so good. 2 is a little bit better, but 3 is nice. 4, ooh, now you're pushing for a lot of points there. So it's up to you. I'll leave that up to you. Okay. All right. So it looks like we're done for this 9th week and we've wrapped it up. So everybody, please take care. It's been a fun quarter with you, and hope you do well on this work and then have an easy test. Okay. So take care. Bye-bye.